In clear terms now, what's your relationship with Mr. Abdul-Rashid Maina?
Well, the truth of the matter is I do not have any relationship whatsoever with Abdul-Rashid Maina. The first time ever alive that I came across Abdul-Rashid Maina was in January 2016, and that was during a trip in UAE in which I formed part of the entourage of Mr. President. So at which time Abdul-Rashid Maina was on exile, so to speak, and he made several attempts through the protocols and associated security officers of the president to meet with Mr. President. He couldn't penetrate, he couldn't be accorded the audience, and some people within suggested to him that he could approach the Attorney General because he was part of that entourage. And they gave him my number, and he made several attempts to talk to me, but knowing the controversy generated back home, I had to seek the opinion of the security agencies as to whether to grant him audience or not. And then it was suggested to me that it is good information, is vital, and I should grant him audience, particularly against the background of the peculiarities of the Office of the Attorney General relating to prosecution and associated things. So I had cause to meet with Abdul-Rashid Maina then for the first time in January 2016, in company of the National Security Advisor, where Abdul-Rashid Maina now gave us a very heavy rundown of the prevailing fraud within the pension scheme and offered to assist the federal government in now plugging the loopholes, making information available that could be useful to the federal government, and then associated vital information.
In all this restatement saga of Mr. Abdul-Rashid Maina, one phrase has come up boldly, and that's the prayer of effecting the consequential order. Now, could you set the record straight on this?
Well, the phrase consequential order was a phrase that emanated from a letter written by Abdul-Rashid Maina's lawyer, where he now applied for the intervention of the Office of the Attorney General, seeking for the Office of Attorney General to consider directing that consequential effect be given to the judgment of the court. So the word as coined was a product of a letter written by the solicitor of Abdul-Rashid Maina.
Now, in clear terms, did you reinstate Mr. Abdul-Rashid Maina?
Well, reinstatement of Mr. Maina in the absence of a judgment of the court, for example, should naturally be a function of the Federal Civil Service Commission. Because as an employee of the Federal Civil Service, it is a responsibility, particularly if you have particular recourse to Section 158 of the Constitution. And in exercising that discretion, the Constitution is clear. The Federal Civil Service is not bound by any directives of any person or organ of government. That is the constitutional provision arising from it. So constitutionally, if you are talking of reinstatement of Maina, it is a function of the Federal Civil Service Commission.
Who reinstated Mr. Abdul-Rashid Maina?
Well, when it borders on constitutional issue, as I stated rightly, the function is exclusively that of the Federal Civil Service Commission. But then, if issues arises, particularly as it relates to judgment of the court and orders, the Office of the Attorney General has a responsibility to seek for clarifications, to seek for certain information from any agency of government for the purpose of intervening when the need judiciously arises for so doing.
Now, the presidency has also been dragged into this. Legal experts are saying that he has no constitutional powers to disengage Mr. Maina from office, that is not his purview, that rather that he should concentrate on the role of his aides in reinstating Mr. Maina. What do you have to say to us about that?
Well, generally issues that borders on establishment, issues that borders on the executive powers are issues that you have to analyze within the context of the constitutional provision and associated legislations, if any. So to the extent whether Mr. President reserves the power to take position or not, I think is something that you have to look at from the perspectives of what constitutes the powers of the executive.
People are saying that since you are fully aware that the EFCC has placed Mr. Maina on watch list, that in all the process of prayer for reinstatement, you never conferred with the EFCC.
Maybe one other issue that you may need to factor into mind is Abdurrashid Maina, as a person, has instituted multiple actions in court, and among the actions that were instituted by him was an action against immigration, EFCC, Inspector General of Police, to the effect that he should be taken out of the watch list, and an order was granted accordingly. So in compliance with the court order, these agencies of the government do not require any sanction from the office of the Attorney General, and then perhaps on their own, they unilaterally lifted him out of the watch list, and then perhaps Mr. Maina came into Nigeria on his own prompting arising from the court order that was granted. So the Office of the Attorney General played no role whatsoever in bringing Maina back to the country.
Now, is the government considering absorbing him, Mr. Maina, into the civil service as a reward for the vital information he's providing on the pension fraud?
Well, not as a policy. The government has not taken any position has not given any commitment to Maina, in return for the information that he has provided. And then for you, it is equally important to put across for the notice of the public that absolving Maina in the event he is absorbed back into the system does not grant him any immunity from criminal prosecution or investigation when the need for so doing arises. It may interest you to know that about 2 months back, arising from whistleblowing policy, a law firm by name Sharif & Co. filed an application in the Office of the Attorney General seeking to recover certain amount of money, I think about 283 million naira, from an account associated with Maina. And then that instructions was accorded, and that money was recovered, and the law firm was eventually paid recovery fees arising from the recoveries made.
Now, $2 billion at stake. Now, what's the truth about this pension fraud?
It will be preemptive, one, of the investigation that is ongoing, and then two, of the processes relating to planned prosecution of the higher profile members of the pension syndicate, for me to start naming them, because it will, one, jeopardize the possibility of prosecution. But one thing I want to put across to the public is the list of those involved cut across almost all spheres. Members of the executive, within the executive cycle, you have people that are involved. Within the legislative cycle, people are involved. And above all, the civil service as well.